Germany are looking to qualify for the World Cup during this international break, and if they do, this would be the 21st time they've played in football's marquee event. Their past two experiences have ended poorly, but apart from those two group stage exits, Germany have won the competition 4 times, in 1954, 1974, 1990 and 2014. So it's now time to rank each win from best to worst. Now, as a disclaimer, I think it's quite hard to distinguish each World Cup win, because even one is good enough, but also like completely different scenarios, completely different eras, completely different players. So I've tried to do like the best I can in an objective sense. But like away from winning the World Cup 4 times, Germany have came close several other times as well, reaching the final in 1966, 1982, 1986 and 2002, as well as the semi-finals in 1970, 2006 and 2010. So to start the ranking is simple, 4 to 1, 4 being the worst, 1 being the best. So the World Cup ranked 4th is 1990. Obviously Italia 90 has a lot of nostalgia around it. The players, the kits, its history has worked nicely on Italia 1990. But on the pitch, it's one of the worst World Cups in modern era in terms of entertainment. The tournament averaged 2.21 goals per game, which is the lowest in the tournament history. It's not the lowest in terms of goals scored, because when the World Cup started, there was only like 8 teams on it, so there was less games naturally. But what summed up this tournament was the final at best. So this was West Germany's final tournament as West Germany, following the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the dissolution of East Germany in 1990 after the tournament. And so in the next edition in 1994, it would be Germany as a whole. But Germany went into this competition with a talented squad with the likes of Lothar Matthäus, Jürgen Klinsmann and Rudi Völler, all in their primes, and they were coached by Franz Beckenbauer. They would be drawn into Group D alongside Yugoslavia, UAE and Colombia. Germany would win. So the results I'm going to list off, you're going to think, okay, how did this average so low games? Because Germany won their opening game against Yugoslavia 4-1. They beat the UAE 5-1, like they're high scoring games. And with those wins, they were actually able to secure qualification. Then in their final game, they drew 1-1 with Colombia, but it was irrelevant as first place was already wrapped up. Winning the group meant Germany would be drawn against their rivals and current European champions, the Netherlands. And in a tense game made famous by Frank Rijkaard's spit on Rudi Völler, Germany would win 2-1, setting up a game against Czechoslovakia in the quarterfinal. And this is where it starts. Beckenbauer's side would win this 1-0 thanks to a Lothar Matthäus penalty. This would mean in the semi-final, Germany would face England. And from an English perspective, this is infamous. It was another tight game. Germany took the lead from an Andreas Bremer free kick quite early on, but England would equalise through Gary Lineker in the 80th minute, sending the game to extra time. Jürgen Klinsmann had 2 clear chances to win the game in extra time. First, a header was saved by the England goalkeeper Peter Shilton. Then a volley went the wrong side of the post. England hit the post just before half time and then of extra time, and then in the second half David Platt would have a goal disallowed for offside, meaning the game would head to penalties. And then in the resultant shootout, England would miss 2 penalties to send Germany into the final. Obviously they would basically relive this game 6 years later at Euro 96. In the final, Germany would play Diego Maradona-led Argentina side, but it would prove to be a rough game, because when is it not when it's against Argentina? And the game would be decided by an Andreas Bremer penalty. Now, the interesting thing about Bremer is he was 2-footed. He's obviously a left back, so his prominent foot was his left. But he also would take penalties with his right foot as well. One was for power, the other was for precision. In this game, in the biggest moment of probably his career, he decides to shoot with his right foot, his weaker foot, and score the penalty. However, if you've watched videos previously on the channel, you know there's rumours about Lothar Matthäus. And there's a rumour in this case as well that Matthäus was a bit of a coward and didn't want to take the penalty. And that's why Bremer stepped up to take it, because obviously Matthäus scored the penalty early in the competition against Czechoslovakia. So there's kind of like a conspiracy that Matthäus was a bit of a coward at this moment. And so Germany win the World Cup for the third time, and this is kind of like, for Franz Beckenbauer, a crowning moment of his. Like, he was the Kaiser on the pitch, but he's also the Kaiser off the pitch, because he managed to lead this talented Germany squad to the World Cup. And then after the game, he goes, with East Germany, with the two Germanys coming together after this, we're going to be twice as good. Obviously, Germany wouldn't win another World Cup for 24 years. But, this goes fourth on our list because of the quality at hand. Third is the most recent win, and that's Brazil 2014. Now, if it's not obvious, this is the only triumph I was actually alive for, so can have some sort of proper opinion on it. And so this tournament, it was kind of like you could see the top of the mountain for this Germany side. In previous tournaments, the 2006 World Cup, the Euros in 2008, the 2010 World Cup, they were kind of like the breeding ground for this generation of Germany players, such as Philipp Lahm and Bastian Schweinsteiger and Lukas Podolski getting their breakthrough in 2006, Thomas Müller in 2010, Sami Khedira, Mesut Ozil. And so these were these players who came close before. They obviously lost in the semi-finals of the World Cup in 2010, and they lost in the final of Euro 2008. And so this was them hitting their peak and was more or less now or never. In Germany's group, they would be drawn against Portugal, Ghana, and the USA. So not an easy group. Opening the group stage, Germany swept aside Portugal, winning 4-0, thanks to Thomas Müller hat-trick and a header from Mats Hummels. But this game's also known for Pepe getting sent off for going head-to-head, quite literally, with Thomas Müller. The second group game provided a potential banana skin against Ghana. Obviously, the nice subplot here was Jerome Boateng was against his brother, Kevin Prince Boateng. He's obviously German-born. And the West Africans ended up drawing 2-2 with Germany, and Germany needed to come from behind to rescue a point here, meaning they needed a result against the US in the final group game to qualify. Despite a strong performance from Tim Howard, Germany would find a break in the 55th minute through Thomas Müller and would win 1-0 and top the group. Then the round of 16 saw them pitted against North African side Algeria. And so on paper you would think, okay, this should be a cakewalk for Germany. But it wasn't, and it proved to be one of the tougher games, if not the toughest game, they faced at this World Cup. And it was a game where Germany really needed to grind out the win. What helped was a masterclass from Manuel Neuer in goal, who kept out the lively Algerians time and time again. But also, Germany had their fair share of chances, and the Algerian keeper stepped up then as well. Andre Schürrle would score the first goal in extra time from a nice back heel before Mesut Ozil wrapped up the win with a 119th minute goal. Algeria would score in the 120th minute, but it didn't really mean anything in the end. And obviously Germany had been getting a bit of stick for how they've been playing, and after the game, Per Mertesacker comes out and says to the press, "Would you rather we play beautiful football but get knocked out? I don't know what you want from me. Do you think that just Mickey Mouse teams are involved in the last 16? All that matters is we're in the quarterfinal." Then adding, "I'll lie down in an ice bath for 3 days and we'll analyse the game in peace." And this is kind of the turning point for Germany. Obviously, tactically, it also helped because there was a switch heading into the quarterfinals against France. It was a midfield of Sami Khedira and Bastian Schweinsteiger. Philipp Lahm returned to defence, so that means they could have an actual fullback instead of playing 4 centre-backs. And in a much better performance, they beat France 1-0 thanks to a header from Mats Hummels. And this would set up a semi-final game against the hosts, Brazil. This ended up proving to be one of the biggest shocks in World Cup history, because this was seen as Brazil's tournament. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these players to win the competition on home soil. something Germany know quite well. But an injury to their star player Neymar in the quarterfinals heavily affected Brazil. And in this semi-final, they simply collapsed. Müller opened the scoring in the 11th minute. Miroslav Klose made it 2-0 in the 23rd. Then within 30 minutes, thanks to goals from Khedira and a brace from Toni Kroos, Germany were 5-0 up. In the second half, Schürrle scored a brace before Oscar scored a consolation goal to make it 7-1. An unprecedented result, especially in this stage of the World Cup. I mean, Mats Hummels came out saying after the game that at half-time they'd agreed not to humiliate Brazil in front of their own fans. And so this would result in a rematch of the 1990 final against Argentina. Germany, heading into this, would be forced into making an early change with Sami Khedira injured in the warm-up, and he would be replaced by Christoph Kramer. Kramer would only play for 32 minutes before picking up a head injury. Now this has become a bit of a joke in the 11 years since, because Kramer would go around asking players, is this the final? He would ask the ref if it's the final, what minute they're in, all these other questions, quite clearly indicating he's had a concussion. After the final, German TV kind of did like a bit of a spoof, speaking to Philipp Lahm, Thomas Müller and I think Bastian Schweinsteiger about what Kramer was asking. So Kramer would be subbed off in the 32nd minute and he would be replaced by André Schürrle. There were several chances for either side, including Manuel Neuer clattering into Gonzalo Higuain, but neither team could break the deadlock. And in the 88th minute, Mario Götze would be subbed on as the game headed towards extra time. It's said that Germany head coach Joachim Löw said to Götze, "Show the world you're better than Messi." In the 113th minute, Schürrle crossed the ball into the Argentina box. It was controlled by Götze and he was able to volley it home to make it 1-1 and win Germany their 4th World Cup. The win marked the culmination of Das Reboot, and this was Germany's plan and aim to make themselves competitive once again, as they had a horrific start to the millennium, apart from in 2002, and so this included reforms of the academy system in the country and better football schooling for the players. I mean, a perfect example of this is, without this system, Germany would not be able to find a player like Toni Kroos, because Toni Kroos was born in the middle of nowhere, basically, in northeastern Germany. Like, the closest major club to him was Hansa Rostock. And so these academies and stuff allowed these type of players who usually wouldn't get these opportunities to be given the opportunity and potentially become a professional footballer. I mean, most of this team that won the tournament came through this reformed academy system, with Miroslav Klose, one of the only ones not to, because he played in 2002. And all of these aspects have been crucial in creating the players you see in the Germany squad today. Jamal Musiala, Florian Wirtz, Joshua Kimmich, Nick Woltemade, all these kind of specialists that you didn't really have back then because it was a lot more physical. That's why this is ranked 3rd, because the next 2 World Cups are quite significant in their own right. In 2nd is the 1954 World Cup. This is Germany's 1st World Cup win, and it's highlighted by the fact they were underdogs for once, and should never really have won. This was also Germany's 1st World Cup following World War II, and during that time, several key players were made to conscript. I mean, some of them, like Fritz Walter, fought in the war, and there's a cool story about Walter. Sepp Herberger, the head coach of the German national team, pulled some strings to make sure his players could still play football during the war, go to certain things. So Walter was drafted into kind of the Air Force. And at the end of the war, with the US and Soviet forces advancing on Germany, the people that Walter was with was okay, we're going to head west because we want to be captured by the Americans because they'll be nicer to us than the Soviets. Walter and his comrades were captured by the US, but given to the Soviets. And then they were heading towards a prisoner of war camp. And while they were waiting somewhere, a game broke out between the prison guards. The ball ended up at Walter, and he joined in. And one of the prison guards had noticed who Walter was and this helped Walter and his brother Ottmar avoid being sent to a gulag, and so then he would return to Germany and become a successful footballer with Kaiserslautern. Other names, there was like Max Morlock as well. And so, in quite a confusing, there were two groups in this competition. In Germany's group, they would play Hungary and Turkey. Germany would beat Turkey, but would be thrashed 8-3 by the Hungarian team, known as the Mighty Magyars, with the likes of Ferenc Puskás in the side, and you should remember this. And because of this meant Germany was sent into a playoff against Turkey to join Hungary in exiting the group, which they would win. And then heading into the knockout rounds, Germany were never favoured against Yugoslavia and then their neighbours Austria. In the quarterfinals, they beat Yugoslavia, and then they beat Austria in the semi-finals to face Hungary in the final in Bern. The final would be played in pouring rain, and this is known as Fritz Walter weather, because the Kaiserslautern's forward the preference to play in this type of weather. This also allowed a man sitting on the bench known as Adi Dassler to try out a new invention: interchangeable studs. So due to the poor weather, Hungary struggled to implement the style of play, but were able to take a 2-0 lead within 8 minutes. However, Germany kept themselves in the game in the 10th minute thanks to a goal from Max Morlock. In the 18th minute, Helmut Rahn would equalise from a corner to make it 2-2. And Germany would really ride their luck for the remainder of this game, with goalkeeper Toni Turek called into action to make several saves from this onslaught of Hungarian attack. Then, in the 84th minute, Rahn would pick the ball out on the edge of the box, drive into the 18-yard box, and was able to get a shot off, despite being surrounded by 3 Hungarian players, to win Germany their first ever World Cup. And the commentator at the time, Herbert Zimmermann, would produce what has become this kind of iconic couple of lines when Rahn scored and at the end of the game.
Schäfer nach innen geflankt, Kopfball, abgewehrt, aus dem Hintergrund müsste Rahn schießen. Rahn schießt, Tor, 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 Tor! Halten Sie mich für verrückt, halten Sie mich für übergeschnappt. Ich glaube, auch Fußballleien sollten ein Herz. Aus! Das Spiel ist aus! Deutschland ist Weltmeister!
The game would be known as the Miracle of Bern, due to Germany overcoming the overwhelming favourites in the final and the fact that they were never meant to get to this point at the end of it anyway. And this kind of set Germany on their way to become the footballing nation we know of today. And so the top rated World Cup is Germany's second in 1974. This was played in West Germany. This was Germany's golden generation, whilst they're also the current holders of the European Championship, winning this 2 years earlier, which was also hosted in Germany. This German team was stacked with people who are legends now: Franz Beckenbauer, Gerd Müller, Sepp Maier, Paul Breitner, Bertie Vogts, Jupp Heynckes, Günter Netzer, Wolfgang Overath, Jürgen Grabowski. You know, all these names that are now etched in German football folklore. But before the tournament, Germany nearly didn't play, because the players had complained over the pay they were set to receive depending on their success, because they heard rumours about what other nations were going to be paid. And some were to be sent home because they had revolted. And this meant there was a division between a set of players, the DFB, and head coach Helmut Schön. And this required Franz Beckenbauer to mediate. And they were able to come to a consensus. But this wouldn't be the last of the troubles between the players and the DFB. So in Group 1, in the tournament, Germany would be drawn against Chile, Australia, and East Germany. In the only ever World Cup they've qualified for, West Germany would beat Chile and Australia, but not without hostility from the crowds, because of the way they'd won, while East Germany also swept aside their group opponents, setting up a shootout in Hamburg between the two sides to decide who won the group. It was a politically charged match, East versus West, communism versus capitalism, and if there was any game to win, it would probably be this one more than the final itself, especially to head coach Schön, who was born in Dresden, but had moved to the West. Germany were favourites and had the better chances because they were seen and they had the better players as well. But in the 77th minute, Jürgen Sparwasser Magdeburg would score the goal to give East Germany the lead and ultimately win the game. And this would mean East Germany would top the group, but this would end up working in West Germany's favour. Instead of a group containing the Netherlands, Argentina and Brazil, West Germany would play Poland, Sweden and Yugoslavia. Germany would win all 3 of their games, sending them to the final against the Netherlands. East Germany, they finished bottom of that group with only 1 point. But this Netherlands side, this was a Dutch side led by Johan Cruyff, and this was their peak total football. And the Netherlands would take an early lead through a Jonas Nieskens penalty. And one of the Dutch players even came out and said they wanted to embarrass Germany. But Germany would equalise through a penalty of their own in the 25th minute through Paul Breitner. There are question marks whether this penalty was justified, as Germany player Bernd Holzenbein seemingly dived for the ball to win the penalty. I mean, no German player has came out and said it was a dive apart from Bertie Vogts. And in the 43rd minute, Gerd Müller would score what turned out to be the winner. And this Netherlands team would never win anything. This was the closest they would come to with the way they had played, and like an international trophy would elude Gerd or Johan Cruyff. Whereas for this Germany side and this set of players, this truly marked them as they became the first side to be both European champions and world champions at the same time, and really sent like this group of players into the stratosphere. But after the tournament, Gerd Müller would retire from the national team, not for footballing reasons, but because the DFB did not allow the players' partners to join them in the celebration banquet in Munich. Instead, they went out and partied in the clubs in Munich. And Wolfgang Overath, Paul Breitner and Jürgen Grabowski would follow Müller in the days and weeks to come. And so the 1974 World Cup win is Germany's greatest World Cup win. Not only because of the players that they had at their disposal, like how good the players are and the fact that it is comfortably their golden generation, the success they had, like kind of the drama around the competition as well with the East Germany game. Yeah, I just think like this is, when you think of Germany winning the World Cup, this is mainly the team that you think of. Obviously, this is completely my opinion, and you're probably typing furiously in the comments, he's an idiot. You know, why didn't he rank 2014 first or whatever? But like, I think that like this was the generation of Germany that like set the standard for Germany to be so dominant. And in recent years, they have struggled. So yeah, let me know what you think that the best World Cup win is. If you agree with what I said, disagree with what I said, and just let me know below.